Good morning. I want to get started because January we have a brief annual meeting thing. And I always say this is because our association was formed by an attorney. So you, you have things that you need to do. Is Jonathan on the call? They're in Arizona. Is he on Zoom? You don't know? Okay. That they join us via Zoom sometimes. It's earlier there. So welcome to First Friday Breakfast Club. I'm Byron Huff, FFBC president. My pronouns are he, him, his. At this time, I would like to call to order the annual meeting of the members of First Friday Breakfast Club. May I have a motion to approve the following resolution? The members hereby approve and ratify the acts and deeds of the board of directors and officers done and performed in conjunction with and after the last annual meeting of the members. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, good. We have no opposition. Let's see, where am I? Oh, there. I only do this once a year. The nominating committee, really that's the board, has placed nominations of the following names for re-election, and there is one new member for 3-year terms. Rachel Gulick, who will be our new board member. Their pronouns are they, them. I still have trouble with that. I'm working on it. They will be replacing Gene Larson. Gene was served on the board for 3 years. I looked that up. He and his husband have volunteered to continue representing FFBC at Iowa Safe Schools Governors Conference, which is a wonderful event. I think governor in the name of it is used loosely since our current governor has never participated. Anyway, Rachel is not here this morning. They are out of the country helping their family. So I don't know what's going on, but we wish them well. Wade Peterson is our newsletter editor and webmaster, so we don't want him to leave. Phil Williams, he assists with so many events like Capital City Pride, and there's going to be a booth at North High School, a multilingual event. So we're going to be represented and introduce the students to First Friday scholarships. And David Wilford, can't miss him, our treasurer. He is in Palm Springs. Be much nicer there than here. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Okay. Hearing none, the slate of the nominating committee is elected. That concludes the annual meeting of First Friday Breakfast Club. Woo! At this time, I would love to offer any new FFBC attendee to introduce themselves. I know there are some. I walked in with one. Welcome. All I can say is I would say come back. So he said he was looking forward to next month. No, not next month. Sorry. Kelly Baum, arts director of the Art Center, is speaking. March, I believe. Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyone else? I know there are more. Yeah. Well, welcome. Welcome. They haven't chased you off yet, so that's good. Any others? Okay. Well, welcome everyone. We always want to make sure everyone feels they enjoy attending this event, and we invite your friends. FFBC is an association of LGBTQ plus individuals and their allies formed in 1996 as a 501c3 entity, making your contributions tax deductible. On the screen, note our anniversary logo created by Wade Peterson. He's become very creative at hidden talents after you retire. He just I guess that keeps him busy, but we're enjoying the fruits of it. Since formation 30 years ago, FFBC has awarded over $550,000 in scholarships awarded annually to high school seniors who have done significant things in their schools and communities to reduce homophobia and educate on LGBTQ issues in their schools and communities. We awarded a record $23,000 scholarships at our June meeting this past year. The scholarship's awarded regardless of gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, or other protected characteristics. This is all thanks to many generous donors who recognize FFB scholarships are important to help exceptional young students with their educational goals. All of this is only possible through your generous donors, our generous donors, and I hope you'll consider donating for our 2026 scholarships, which will be awarded in June. I think the cutoff is April 30th for this year. FFBC sends 2 emails each month, one for our meeting, one is our newsletter, a link to it. If you're not receiving them, let us know. We'll add you to the list. The copy deadline for our newsletter is January 26th. Anyone is welcome to submit an article. Be sure and follow us on Facebook, YouTube. We do post video archive on YouTube, past speakers. Some of them are video, some of the older ones are just audio, but there's an archive, significant archive there. And Rick Miller has an announcement to make. Sorry about the background. If you hear that, we can't get rid of it. I'll have to talk to Whitcherman about it. It's annoying me.
It is a little annoying. Good morning, everyone. I'm here representing the Pride Center, which is just across the street over here. And around 25 years ago, when it was down next to the saddle, there was a fire. And at that time, it seemed prudent to get rid of nearly 4,000 books from our library. They were taken to the dump. None of the people involved in actually the library was in on that decision, but they started again. And we now have a new library after 25 years of over 4,000 books, and they are all digitized and cataloged. We're having a new launch for that, and you'll see those listed on your tables. It's on February 1st. And without my permission and without my knowledge at the time, they have decided to name the new library after me. So they will be celebrating me. I've been telling people at least it's not the Rick Miller Memorial Library. So, yes. So please keep that in mind. It should be a wonderful afternoon. We want to thank especially the Polk County Board of Supervisors for helping us with shelving and all kinds of things, including a new remodel of our office space into a reading room. We've even got professional remodeling people working on that. So it's very exciting. Val Gale is an author who's going to be speaking on January 17th at the center. There is a summit coming up, a very important one. One Iowa is kind of leading the way with a roundtable group of people from all the different gay and lesbian organizations on the 17th. I'm sorry, on the 24th, Mickle Center, Saturday, 9 to 12. Please be there if you can, especially if you are involved in another LGBT group, and I know there's many of you in this room. And last of all, tomorrow at noon, I'm going to be one of 8 people that gets a pie in the face. And that is a fundraiser that the UAW is doing for the Pride Center. And it's called Anita Bryant Day. So that's why we're getting banana cream pie in the face. My favorite. So I guess I'm the lucky one. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rick. I have to hold this close. Yeah, Rick is well deserved. He's done an amazing job at the Pride Center, going from nearly shutting down to a wonderful place. Our First Friday Breakfast Club belongs to the LGBTQ roundtable that he's speaking about. Capital City Pride formed that and brought people together. There's a community calendar I'll talk about and so forth. So anyway, thank you, Rick. Where am I? Lost my place. Okay. Yeah, so Capital City Pride created a community calendar specifically meant to promote LGBTQ plus events and activities. Anyone can submit an event which can be approved by someone to make sure it's appropriate. We encourage everyone to utilize this great tool to help the community. You can find the link on our website, ffbciowa.org, or Capital City Pride Google it, you'll find, and under resources, there's a link to the calendar. So we are putting our events there, and many others are as well. Our next board meeting is Tuesday, oh, what? I changed that. Sorry. When it's January. What's Tuesday? Anyway, it's this coming Tuesday. Didn't update my comments. And now Ken will introduce our speaker this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I think in life, timing is important. And there's lots of times I've known Matt over the course of my life. I first met Matt when I was soon out of the closet after being married to a woman. And as many who've been married to women and had closeted, I started dating a lot. And that's when I first met Matt. And timing is important. He was dating my roommate. And then that didn't work out, but shortly after that, we both met our respective husbands who've been together 20 years. And over the course of the years, I wouldn't see Matt very often, but occasionally at the farmers market, we would run into Matt and Pat running their stand, and they were important in advocating for local farmers at the farmers market. And so it seems like through Matt's career, he's always been at the right place at the right time. Speaking of timing, I've reached that point in my life where I need readers to do this. So Matt Russell became the executive director of the Iowa Farmers Union in September. He is a fifth-generation Iowa farmer who grew up on a commodity and livestock farm in Cass County. He now co-owns and operates Coyote Run Farm near Lacona, Iowa, with his spouse, Patrick Stanley. Matt is the former state executive director of the USDA Farm Service Agency in Iowa for the Biden administration. And then in 2018, he became the executive director of Iowa Faith and Climate Network, a statewide faith-based climate action organization. Prior to that, he spent 12 years on staff at the Drake University Agricultural Law Center. He's been an active member of Iowa Farmers Union for over 20 years. For those of you who may remember, Matt actually spoke to the Breakfast Club in July of 2012 when he was at Drake University. And if you are a Substack reader, I encourage you to give him a follow. He writes very interesting progressive articles on Substack that I really encourage you to subscribe to. We are glad to have him back with us this morning, so please welcome Matt Russell.
All right. Well, speaking of timing, apparently my phone did something so that I usually like to record myself so I can go back and listen and, critique myself. And I guess my phone's not going to do that this morning. So thank you, Ken and Wade and lots of other folks that I'm seeing around this room. I'm going to start off the clicker. And I'm of the age that last night, as I was laying in bed, I was thinking, I've been, and I'll say this a little bit more in a minute, but I used to attend this fairly frequently when I first moved back to Iowa. And then occasionally I would show up. And I was laying in bed last night thinking, now, did I speak to the group at one time or not? It seems like I may have, but then Wade reminded me and gave me the date, which was awesome. So I haven't been here recently. But before I go too much into the presentation about Iowa Farmers Union, which is what we'll talk about today, and Iowa Farmers Union is the oldest general farm organization in the state of Iowa, and we are a 501c5 for the lawyers in the room. And for you who aren't lawyers, what that means is we're exactly the same entity as the Iowa Corn Growers, the Iowa Pork Producers, the Iowa Farm Bureau. So when you see those farm groups out there doing things, we can do those exact same things, and we do. But while we're the oldest, we're not the largest. But we are positioned really well in this moment in history, which I'll talk a little bit about. But we're part of the National Farmers Union family, which there's farmers unions, I believe, in 33 states or close to that. So not every state, but a really big presence. And so on the national scale, you'll often see the National Farmers Union taking positions. You'll see the American Farm Bureau taking positions. Sometimes those align, sometimes they don't. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But before, I want to just talk about my personal journey for just a few minutes. So I'm a farm kid from Western Iowa, and I came out to myself at 19. I was at Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa. So I came out to myself and some very small group of friends. And when I came out, then I went into the seminary to consider becoming a Catholic priest. And I was on that journey for almost 7 years. So I got about a year and a half before I was ordained a priest. I then stepped away from that. And part of it was I needed to think about who I was as a complete person, which included my sexuality, and to keep that private, which felt very comfortable at the time in 1995, 96, that I left to take some time to figure out who I really was and whether I wanted to go back into ministry, ordained ministry, like what's going on in my life. So I left the seminary in Chicago and went to Las Vegas to discern. My relatives lived there, so it wasn't like I went to Vegas to really cut loose. But I went out there and I ended up getting offered a job teaching at a Catholic high school. So I taught religion for a couple of years as I was trying to come out at the same time and figuring all that out. And in that time, I came back to Iowa, back and forth, spent summers here farming with my parents, and I'd lived in Las Vegas, I'd lived in Chicago, and I'm trying to figure out how to come out as a gay man. And when I came back to Iowa, what I realized is if I want to be a really healthy person who happens to be gay, and that is a strength and welcomed, and I can live a normal farm kid Iowa life, Iowa was an incredibly healthy place to do that. And when I moved back, I lived right south of the lawn here in a little apartment for a few months. And I did come to First Friday Breakfast Club frequently until Pat and I moved to the farm in 2005. And it was the folks that I met, particularly the gay men who maybe had been married and maybe had kids, that were so integrated in this community of Iowa. And so I just want to let you all know that this group and the kinds of people who've been supporting this group make an enormous difference in people's lives. And I'm so honored now and so proud that this farm kid, who happens to be gay, has 25 years of agricultural leadership, has the opportunity to now be the executive director of the Iowa Farmers Union. I started right after leaving the administration. I did some contract work helping them figure out what they're going to do next. And then I took the position full-time in September. And it's such an incredible opportunity to work for this organization at a moment in time where so much of the work that we've all done is coming under attack. And when I say we, I don't just mean the Farmers Union, I mean Iowans. So, when I met Pat, I felt that this was a healthy place to be. I had no idea that in 2003, when we got married in our backyard, that this would be the state where we could first be married, no holds barred, completely marriage equality, right? And we didn't do a lot of work in that space. Other people did. But we stood on their shoulders and we benefited greatly. And in 2010, after years of saying my partner, I started saying my husband every time I spoke, whether I was speaking to the corn growers or on Iowa Public Radio or a TV station. And when I talked about our farm, it was not my farm, it was our farm, I always talked about my husband. So that's like my personal journey. Now, what does it mean to be part of the Iowa Farmers Union as their executive director? I am not their gay executive director. I am their executive director who happens to be gay. And they see my membership in the LGBTQ community as one of my strengths. They see that having grown up on a farm, a commodity farm, having done 20 years in the local food movement, having served in the Biden administration, having led a nonprofit, been at Drake for 12 years, and being gay are all equally important parts of who I am as their part of their leadership. And it is so incredible to get to work in this state for an organization that diversity is seen as an absolute strength. That's diversity of rural communities, it's diversity of crops, it's diversity of farming systems, it's diversity of people who live in our rural communities. So I'll get to the presentation now, and we'll have some time for question. I'm going to bring up Aaron Lehman, our president, to join me for answering some questions. So I'm going to go through the slides pretty quickly. So we're growing our capacity because in this moment, a lot of what we have stood for, rural communities, farming, farm, ranch, agriculture, food systems, nutrition, the Farm Bill, so much of what has just been taken for granted is being completely blown up in this last year. A lot of farm organizations have gotten calls. We know this because we talk to the media. They won't return those calls. We have every time. We're somewhere between 250 and 300 interviews that we've done, including, of course, we don't know till it happens, but Aaron is supposed to be on CNN tomorrow to talk about the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. He's been on PBS NewsHour nationally, testified at a subcommittee in Congress, in the Senate last month. We have answered every call, and we have stood up, and we've stood up for our values. And not every farm group has done that, and not every chamber of commerce, and not every university, right? But that's who we are as an organization. So we're working on these issues. I'm not going to read them all, but we are working on nutrition. We are working on affordable health care. We are working on food systems. We got $12 million cut this year. There were $12 million dedicated contracts signed, at least by the organizations, and approved, that got canceled, that were supposed to go to farmers. It was supposed to go to organizations that were going to give $12 million to organizations, schools, food banks, care facilities, and 80% of those dollars were going to be used to buy food directly from farmers for those institutions. $12 million cut. $50 million of conservation investments in the EQIP program and the CSP program meant for farmers this year got cut. That meant $10 million a year for 5 years for those two programs disappeared. Those are the kinds of impacts. And then we had the trade wars, and so the tariffs. Our inputs went up, the price for our commodities went down. We're on the cusp of a farm crisis that a lot of people, including the groups that are not been willing to confront the administration, they are still saying we're like on the cusp of an 80s farm crisis. It's a real disaster. So we're working on all of those issues. So just some examples. So here's Iowa Public Radio, Beth Hoffman, one of our farmers in Monroe County, Berlin Wobeter with CBS News. This was national. CBS evening news, morning news, all the social stuff, the social media out there. And then Aaron on the front page of the New York Times. So we've been showing up, our members, on the issues that matter, that are going to make a difference going into 2026 and beyond. And this is Aaron testifying at the subcommittee of the Committee on Investigations. So Republicans on the subcommittee were investigating the failures of the Obamacare ACA. And so Aaron's standing there testifying how important those enhanced subsidies are for farmers, small businesses, anybody who doesn't have access to employer-based health care, what it means for innovation, for risk-taking, farmers and rural folks. But then we know that applies across the board, whether you live in town or in Iowa or another state. So Farmers Union, political impact for 2026. As I said, we're a 501c3 or 501c5. We can endorse candidates. We can lobby on behalf of our farmers. We're the same structure as it's labor, unions and farm groups is our status. So we can advocate on behalf of our members, which are our farmers and our friends of the farmer. So those are the things that we're looking at expanding and leveraging for a political impact, not a partisan impact. We're a bipartisan organization, but we can lean in on those issues associated with our values. And then we also have the Education Foundation, which is a 501c3. A lot of our work is done in that space with those resources, and we partner with the Iowa Environmental Council, with the Harkin Institute, with the Iowa Wildlife Federation, with lots of groups. And we are going to be leaning into empowering farmers to be part of cleaning up our water. We are not the organization that wants to divert your attention from agriculture and relationship to clean water. We're going to be honest about it. Agriculture is part of the problem, but that means farmers can be part of the solution when we invest in them. And may I remind you that this administration took $50 million away this year, but probably more like $100 million because there were a bunch of other projects that were canceled. So we don't know for sure, but we estimate that about $100 million that should have been available to Iowa farmers this year and over the next few years, but started this year, $100 million disappeared. And we've been standing up and saying that now going on almost a year in a few weeks. So we are a membership organization. We welcome, if any of you grew up on farms, if you still have farmland in your family, if you are still involved in farming, we'd love to have you as a member. If you appreciate our values and want to support family farms, we have an associate membership as well. We call it the Friend of the Family Farmer. We have student memberships. We have new and beginning farmer memberships. So jump on our website and take a look at that. We welcome those new folks. Our goal is to grow our membership by, 20 to 50% this year. And I think we can do that because we are relevant and we're engaged, making a difference. We will endorse some Republican candidates. We will endorse some Democratic candidates. We are a bipartisan organization. But what we won't ever do is back away from those values. We are going to be in Denison next week, meeting with leaders about how we as a farm group can lean in and advocate better for the value of diversity in our rural communities. Every rural community in this state that has grown or held its own in population, with few exceptions, every one of them is because people are coming to this state who want to be part of Iowa agriculture, who weren't born in this state and even in this country, right? Our whole history of agriculture in this state is immigration. New waves of people from other parts of the world who want to be part of the story of Iowa agriculture. And if we don't lean into that, we're choosing to turn out the lights in the kinds of communities I grew up in and lots of other folks grew up in. So at this point, I want to bring up Aaron so that we can ask, you guys can pepper us with some questions. I think we have, 10 or 15 minutes to do that. And as Aaron comes up, we've known each other since 1999 when I came back to the state. He was the legislative or the government affairs for Iowa Farmers Union. I was with the National Catholic, it's called Catholic Rural Life. And so we've known each other and worked together. And in the last year, we've talked almost every day, working on this together. So it's great. So I'll step kind of here, and you guys can ask questions, make comments, and we'll take turns answering them. Yeah.
I don't want to say victimized, but we're still aware that a lot of the statewide policy decisions that are being made are because the result of elections in rural districts, et cetera. Can you talk about that phenomenon, what rural progressive organizing looks like, and how we can bring the temperature down?
Yeah. You want to start?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things that we're doing is we're getting out into doing these community conversations. We work with some of our, well, let me first start answering that first part, that urban rural divide. There are lots of differences between folks who grew up in rural Iowa and folks who grew up in urban Iowa and who now live in different places. There's differences. But the idea that there's this great urban rural divide is constructed and reinforced for political reasons. And so, and we see it from the left as well as the right. People keep reiterating that there's all this difference. And diversity is our strength, but it's the bridges across that diversity is what's the strength. But when you amplify those divisions for political reasons, then you tear apart the ability to do smart public policy. You tear apart the ability for people to come together, right? And when you have that, we've watched that this year, that when you amplify those divisions, then you allow very powerful interests to take over and set the policy agenda in ways that probably the majority of the folks wouldn't necessarily want that to happen. Public schools would be an example of that, where the vast majority of Iowans are not thrilled with the attacks on public schools, right? But because of the way it was framed and the political nature of things, the majority was able to get the voucher program in place that really undermines public education. So that's kind of the response of the urban-rural divide. We're working every day to build the bridges while we still recognize the strength of the difference.
And I'll just add a little piece of that too. We are operating under a farm bill that was passed 8 years ago. 8 years ago, 3 years overdue for an update, a badly needed update. Farm bills only happen because we bring a wide set of issues together. Nutrition programs and conservation programs work with crop insurance programs and education and research programs. All have to work together to build a policy that serves our nation's food system properly. And we had a very good example of the political purposes being used to divide is the attack on our nutrition programs, which are essential to a strong farm bill. We made the largest cuts to nutrition programs in our country's history. So how do we get a farm bill coalition back together that can build a food system policy that makes sense? It's essential. And it's the only way you build good food policy, by bringing all these aspects together. We've got a long ways to go to rebuild that coalition. You know, the Silent Six that are serving us in Congress are not addressing that problem, right? We have, out of our 6 members of Congress, 4 of them serve on the Agriculture Committee, 2 in the Senate, 2 in the House. No other state has that level of representation on our ag committees. And they are completely quiet about how to rebuild that coalition we have to have in order to have good national food policy in this country.
And thank you for being a member. Yeah, Ryan.
As far as your membership, is there a difference between Farmers Union and Farm Bureau or corn or soy or whatever the association might be, as far as the size of farms that are part of your organization, and what about absentee farmers?
So, I don't know what the makeup of other farm groups look like. I'm a member of Farm Bureau. I'm a member of the Iowa Cattlemen's Association. So I sometimes go to their events. I get their newsletters and things like that. You know, I see their political take on things. But I don't know, when you break down, you know, how many members of the Iowa Cattlemen's Association are actually in an ownership position with cattle. I don't know what those numbers are. I don't know what the number of actively engaged farmers are, what percentage of the Iowa Farm Bureau. I know that a significant number of their membership is because of the insurance, right? So if you're going to have their insurance, and some of that's changing. Illinois went through a big process with their Illinois Farm Bureau. So, but our membership, we do have farms that are in the thousands of acres of commodity farmers. and we have urban farmers that are hundreds of square feet, right? And everything in between. And we have members from almost every county, if not maybe every county. Um, and I would guess our mix is probably like 2/3 farmers, 1/3 friend of the family farmer. I don't know that Farm Bureaus is that. If it's 2/3 farmers, 1/3 not farmers but members, I don't know what that looks like. But we're solidly represented. I mean, our farmers are the voting members that lead our policy, that lead our board and things like that. So we're very grounded, but we also welcome folks who want to be part of that and support it. Yeah, Rick.
My church right now, in a group, we are reading a book called White Rural Rage. I'm not sure if you've heard of that book, but it really shows the complicated situation that's going on between urban and rural. And my personal opinion, we're not through the whole book yet, is that media plays a huge part. And I'd just like to know, how often are you able to get on like something like WHO radio or any other, what we consider
Well, the WHO Big Show at the Noon Hour, we have been invited and we've participated. If you listen to the Big Show, it takes a little while to get through the agribusiness ads trying to sell stuff to us farmers before they get to the news story. And there is a little bit of, if you're in that community that's able to pay for those ads, you're more likely to be invited as a guest, and that is part of that. But we are answering the call more than ever this year. And we are, and not just from the CNN thing like we'll do tomorrow morning, but News Nation and Fox News, and they've been reaching out because these issues that we're being called upon to address and that our farmers have been working on for decades and decades and decades are not partisan issues. They're not far right, far left issues. Fair trade and free trade are not partisan issues. Nutrition should never be weaponized as an issue. So we're reaching out and we're answering the call from all sorts of media sources. I will say that it's very, very common for us to be talking to national media, even state media, to turn every farm policy issue into a political urban-rural divide issue. You farmers all voted this way. Aren't you getting what you deserve? Well, farmers didn't all vote that way. And we don't characterize people in our organization by who they voted for. We talk about policies and what's good for their farm and their community. So there's a big movement to try to exasperate this rural urban divide. And it is, media plays a big role in that. And of course, our politicians serving us have played a big role in that as well.
I live in two states, New York and Iowa. New York has legalized recreational cannabis. I know that Iowa farmers get excited when corn is $5 a barrel. Have you checked the price of a bushel of cannabis flower? I'm wondering, just from a farm perspective, what's in the way? Why can't we grow that here? Why are is there any awareness? Can you speak to that? Because it's such a difference across the nation and the law and what grow.
Yeah. I'll speak to from an economic standpoint a little, and I'll let you speak to the regulatory side. So having been in the local foods, so I grew up on a commodity farm, and then I didn't want to do millions of dollars for 1,000 acres. I want to do hundreds of $1,000s, hundreds of thousands for 100 acres, which is what Pat and I did. And then we did all local foods and sold, retail agriculture. The economics of farming are really difficult. And I think part of what the hemp industry, whether it's the oils, whether it's fiber, so there's been a lot of headwinds for the cannabis industry, the hemp industry. And unfortunately, some of how that got played out is kind of your typical story of agriculture and farming, is where there's a market and then you saturate it and so we've seen across the country where, like in Colorado and other places, where there's a notion that there's this really big opportunity, but then you've got the cotton industry and others that pushed against it. And then so there's an economic real challenge there that has to be addressed as well. And so we've seen some farmers in Iowa who've made investments in that industry, some parts of that industry. And then you get the regulatory pushback and you get the oversupply and you get we can raise it, but then how do you sell it? So that's the economic reality there. That why farm policy is so important is because as collectively we should be doing smart policy so that we're providing more opportunities for more crops, for more diversity. And we're just seeing going backwards now with using farm policy to do just the opposite of encouraging diversity and encouraging, new crops and new opportunities for farmers. So that's just kind of an overview. And I don't know if it does NFU have a position on this. If they do, you would probably know it better than I do.
No, policy needs to encourage diversity, and Iowa is probably no greater example of the need to diversify in agriculture. But it needs to be supported by good policy. And times like these, where farmers are growing every bushel of soybean under the cost of production, every bushel of corn under the cost of production.
Selling.
Sorry.
The cost of.
Yeah, sorry, but I was getting mixed up. We're losing money on every acre of corn, losing money on every acre of soybeans, almost on every commodity, probably except cattle, which was losing money for years after years. During these times, it illustrates how much we need diversification in what we grow and what we can grow profitably here in Iowa. It also, our farmers are also experiencing, they're experiencing the realities of the challenges of doing that. And we have a history of Iowa. Matt and I both grew up during the farm crisis. And unfortunately, without a sophisticated market and policy approach, some farmers get drawn in trying to grasp at some straws and have ended up on the wrong end of those things that really haven't been supported by good market and good policy considerations. So I'll stop there. Just saying, we really need to emphasize the need to diversify Iowa agriculture, and it's right now is no greater time to be thinking about it because we're seeing the impacts of having less and less diversity in Iowa agriculture than we've ever had.
So I'm seeing those two. So we'll go here, and then there. So.
Like to comment on politics as well as the economics of what seems obvious to many, but seems to be hidden sand by the Trump administration. What's the Iowa Farmer Union application?
Yeah. So when I left Drake in 2018, I went to Iowa Faith and Climate Network. They hired me because my pitch to the board was, everybody thinks farmers won't talk about climate change, but that's a political framing. And when you talk to them individually, they're much more willing to engage. But we've created a political environment where we haven't, oil industry, agribusiness, conservatives did a really good job of organizing people to be climate skeptics, and farmers were leading the charge publicly. So in Iowa in 2018, 19, and in the caucus cycle, I worked specifically to get farmers engaged. We started in church basements, just farmers talking to each other, to think about, like, if we're going to lead on this as farmers, how can we lead on it? And the farmers developed this very quippy, like, you got to pay farmers to help solve climate change. And then Biden picked it up and Tom Vilsack picked it up, and Pete Buttigieg was the first one to say it on the debate stage in 2019, and then every debate, national debate through the last debate at Drake in 2020, every debate had somebody saying we got to pay farmers to solve climate change. So we'd flip the narrative, and then the Biden administration spent billions of dollars, invested billions of dollars in this notion that if we invest in farmers to directly help solve climate change, we're going to get good outcomes, but we're also flipping the narrative. The entire agriculture community got on that wagon. Now, from a policy standpoint, you can pick it apart. There was a lot of dollars going to big ag and agribusiness, right? It wasn't perfect, but the narrative had flipped. And on January 20th of the last year, they flipped the narrative back. And this is part of the bludgeoning of reestablishing this very conservative, very anti-climate solution, anti-environment, anti-regulation, anti-tax. It all fits together. Farmers have been in the middle of it. And unfortunately, we saw a big flip back to now lots of resources and this whole notion of climate change is a hoax and blah, blah, blah. That's not farmers naturally coming back to that. That's this administration exercising its political strength, because you had Senator Grassley, you had Senator Ernst. I mean, they were co-sponsors of the Growing Climate Solutions Act in the Senate, and now they're back to being this kind of so that's maybe more than you're asking for, but that's the framework we're dealing with. And Farmers Union back in 2000, National Farmers Union had a carbon a carbon bank thing that they developed. Iowa Farm Bureau and National Farmers Union, those two organizations had the largest carbon capture program that they were trying to develop, those two in the world. And then Farmers Union stayed true to that. Iowa Farmers Union or Iowa Farm Bureau flipped and went to the climate skeptic stuff. So your great question. We're in the fight. We've never stopped being in the fight for helping farmers be part of the solution. Yeah.
Of those same farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. As do a whole bunch of members of local chambers of commerce.
Yeah. A real issue, a real issue. I'll just bring up a little anecdote. One of our members was at a meeting talking about trade issues. The person who was leading the discussion was Dr. Chad Hart of Iowa State University. And they started by talking about corn yields in Iowa, predictably, right? All the farmers around the table were talking about rust. Well, and how often are we going to get rust? Because it impacted my yields, it impacted farmers' yields all across Iowa, and corn yields just weren't what we were thinking because of the rust, because of the massive rainfalls that we were getting this summer. And the thinking around was, well, this used to be an anomaly. And Dr. Chad Hart, the leading economist, who's no progressive card-carrying member, right, said, you all know that this is changing, right? That maybe things like southern rust won't be an anomaly. And the farmers were all nodding their head. They were all in agreement with it. That's a sign that farmers are, even in, this was not a political meeting. We weren't talking about any bills or any policies, but it's a sign to me that farmers are understanding what's going on. They're understanding the science. They understand the risk that we're at, and that by doing nothing, we risk so much more.
And I'll connect water quality. We're working on water quality. We're the ag group that says agriculture's part of the problem. It's causing cancer, and we've got to figure out how to fix this. And we need to be investing in farmers so they have solutions, right? So that we put more conservation on the ground. We're changing, we're diversifying our farming systems. These are all the things that science tells us needs to happen. It's going to take political will to invest in new systems so that farmers can lean into those, make money. Maybe they're sequestering carbon and could get some payments through the marketplace, maybe some additional support through public policy, right? All of these things link together. And then our algal blooms and other things where our water quality is a problem, climate change is amplifying that, right? We're in a system that's just compounding itself, coming apart. And instead of investing in farmers to figure out how to lean in and adapt to that, as well as create farming systems that provide solutions, we're doing just the opposite. We're resourcing status quo and blocking those kinds of innovations. And the political building bridges across urban and rural, like we're actively doing the political work to try to keep that from happening. And when I say we, I mean as a nation, not we as farmers union, right? We're in the fight to try to put these things together. But and then did you have a question, Trudy?
Yeah. First of all, I really have to say I so admire your ability for nonpartisanship. I'm sure I could learn much from it. Back to membership of the organization, Matt. Would a TACO be a member, an owner of a TACO?
We have members who use that have industrial feeding operations that would meet the definition of CAFO. We have some members who are that. What we don't have that I know of is like a corporate member. So if you look at Prestige Farms, they're a corporate owner of CAFOs that I don't know that we have like a corporate ownership of a CAFO. I don't know that we have any huge, big, CAFOs that, have tens of thousands of hogs in their ownership. I don't know that we have somebody like that in our membership. I'm not going to say we don't, but we do. We have a broad membership. Yeah. And I think we're time, John, or we can quit. Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and answer that quickly.
Yeah.
You can talk to us. We'll stick around. You can talk to us more. Biofuels are a really important part of our future. Can we grow carbons that we're using for gas and liquid fuel, like ethanol and biodiesel? They're an important part of our future, right? But if we don't have a biofuel policy, but we only have a corn policy, that then ethanol supports just that corn policy, and right, that's where we get into status quo, and we then start to get into excesses where we get things like pipelines that start to not make as much sense from an economic standpoint. They only make sense from this kind of political standpoint. And that's where we run into some real problems. So we support the ethanol industry. We support the biodiesel industry in terms of like what those opportunities are for farmers, but not without the ability to stand up and say too much. That doesn't make sense, right? Are we looking at other crops that could go into this fuel system? Biodigesters are going to be something that you're going to hear about in this legislative session. So, if biogas means 50,000 head dairy operations, and that's how we're going to do biogas, you're not going to see the farmers union standing up and saying, yes, let's have 50,000 head dairy operations around the state so we can lead the world in biogas, right? Not that somebody said that, but you can start to see how those kinds of status quo, big farming operations, increased concentration of animal agriculture, those are some challenges. Thanks, Simon. And shoot me an email. Happy to talk to anyone.
We're gonna have to work with Hoyt Sherman on that background noise. My screen to come up here. There we go. Well, thank you, Matt and Aaron. We could probably be here all day talking about a lot of things. There's so many policies the Iowa Farm Bureau and the Iowa Farmers Union have in common. Unfortunately, politics seems to get in the way, as with so many things, and sometimes causes changes that create differences between them. I too am a farm kid. Grew up south of Winterset. My allergies and asthma prevented me from staying there, but the farm is still there. It's still in my family. Diversity is important. It makes us stronger, not weaker, regardless of the push against DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion. They just say DEI like it's a bad thing. But if you really know what it means, it's not a bad thing. And ACA was important to many Americans, particularly farmers and small businesses who did not have an employer to provide their health care. Trade wars, funding cuts are hitting the farm community hard. Farming is very important to the U.S. economy, and we can all see it impacting Iowa. There's a domino effect when a farmer doesn't do well. Think of terms of spending, supporting local businesses, implements, so forth. Water quality is important to all of us. I believe someday clean water will become more valuable than oil. Truly, it already is in some places. Immigration is also important to the U.S. economy, regardless of the vilification, if not the right word, of immigrants, making us seem like they're bad people and they're taking American jobs. The lack of immigrants will decimate many communities, small and large, particularly in Iowa. We can see communities. Politics has been amplifying narratives that vilify so many issues that ultimately hurt all of us. The rural-urban divide is exaggerated from these narratives through public media. The dismantling of so many programs that support public media and even our public libraries' emphasis on unbiased only serves to control free speech. Climate change hurts all of us, particularly farmers, where climate could make or break their success. So, thank you again. Upcoming speakers next month. I hope all of you can join us. Bring your friends. February 6th will be Tom Vilsack. He has spoken before. Distinguished career serving as mayor of Mount Pleasant, which I didn't know that. I went to his website. Iowa State Senator, Governor of the state of Iowa, Secretary of Agriculture, currently serves as CEO of the World Food Prize. So I hope you can join us. And Kelly Baum, Director of Art Center and the Papa John Sculpture Park. You'll find her amazing as well. Go to the LGBTQ community calendar for upcoming speakers as well as our website, and you'll find archives there. We're really in our newsletter. Go to the LGBTQ roundtable, and Wes Mullins, who is director of the Capital City Pride, said our newsletter is the best. We put events of all organizations in that newsletter, and I learned things that I try to keep up on. Because Wade reaches out to all the organizations, please tell me what you have going on. And it's going to make us stronger, and we have to keep working. And someday it'll get better instead of worse, I feel like. So thank you and have a great weekend.